Light Family Chiropractic. Thank you so much for joining in tonight. Tonight we are talking about navigating the first trimester. So I'm going to put the chat on here. I would love for this to be a conversation. I am here to answer any questions if you're in the first trimester now, or if you're looking to get pregnant, or if you have any input from your experience from your first trimester and what worked and helped you navigate the highs and lows. Because the reality is there are a lot of highs and there are a lot of lows when it comes to this time in pregnancy. And I just got the thumbs up that everything is working. Good. So glad. Okay, so with the first trimester, I feel like it is kind of not talked about enough. It's kind of a season of pregnancy where not a lot of people know that a woman is pregnant. So not a lot of, people talk about it. It's kind of like once somebody announces their pregnancy, usually towards the end of the first trimester, beginning of the second trimester, then it's all about pregnancy, birth, all the things. And that's awesome. I think, those second, third trimester are super important, but I also think the first trimester is really important. And I've been through it now twice. Our little girl, Dr. David and I have a little girl named Evely, and she's almost 3.5. And now we haven't fully announced this yet, but we are expecting our second, and I'm about 16 weeks along. So I am fresh. I planned this webinar when I was in the first trimester, and I knew that I was going to be fresh out of it when I did it. So it's all fresh on my mind. I was just there. I was just in it, and it's not always easy. And I remember when I was sitting at my computer and I was planning out my webinars for this quarter, I wanted to name it because I was feeling so crummy. I was sitting in front of David and I said, I think I'm going to name it Surviving the First Trimester. And he was like, I don't think that's the best idea. You should probably call it Navigating the First Trimester. And he's so right, because it's not just about surviving it. There are a lot of great moments, but when you're in it with some of the physical, mental, and emotional strain that comes with that first trimester, it does feel like you're surviving a little bit. And so I want to really dig into it tonight. I don't know how long I'm going to talk, so however long you want to stick around. And again, if you're in the first trimester, or been there, or planning on being there soon, I would love your input. The chat is open, so chime in anytime. And so with the first trimester, every pregnancy is unique. So you may hear some of the stuff and be like, oh, well, that never happened to me, or I don't think that will happen to me, or I felt great in my first trimester, and that's awesome. I'm so happy for you. And again, every woman is different, every hormonal system is different, and everybody's bodies and every pregnancy is very unique. I mean, even pregnancies within one mother are unique. So these are going to be pretty general. A lot of them are going to be focused on also my personal experience, because again, I was just there. And so the highs and lows relate to emotional, mental, and physical. So in terms of, really from that first pregnancy test, there's the positive pregnancy test, there's this excitement and joy and maybe relief and just bliss. And you're like, oh my gosh, I'm really pregnant. It's so exciting. Or if it's unplanned, it might be like shock, overwhelm, just feeling like, am I ready for this? What else is going on in my life? How is this going to affect my life? And it can be a mix of feelings, and that's okay. And I think a lot of moms, from literally that first pregnancy test, depending on how your feelings feel, there's mom guilt and mom shame that starts literally from the beginning. And I'm a big supporter of having, putting that mom guilt aside, because we're not perfect, we're human, and we're going to feel ups and downs along the whole journey, especially once baby's here. We may have expectations and thoughts of things that we would do a certain way as mothers, and we do them differently, and we're not perfect. And so giving yourself grace is really important. And I forget where I heard this, but someone said that pregnancy requires a lot of grace and a lot of grit. And I think that goes into motherhood too, because you really have to find strength a lot of times that you didn't know you had. You have to find patience that you didn't know you had, and you have to give yourself grace. So that's what we're all about here. So with all of these things, always go back to that grace and that grit as you navigate the ups and downs and the highs and lows. So I want to kind of continue on. So you have that positive pregnancy test, that joy, excitement, bliss, fear, overwhelm, anxiety, grief, all of these things that can show up, and they're conflicting in your heart and your mind. And just knowing that they're fleeting, they'll come, you will process, and having support is really big. And I'm going to go into that too. And then you have the next step, if your partner's not there with you when you get the test, of sharing the news with your partner. And if this was a pregnancy that you guys were trying to conceive and planning to get pregnant, that moment is often filled again with bliss, excitement, joy, tears, just happiness, just feeling so blessed. And if you and your partner weren't planning on it, then it might feel a little bit more strained, or, you might feel a little bit more anxiety and like having to really plan out how you want to share the news and how you're going to navigate that. And then every relationship is unique. And again, having support through family or professionally in these moments is really important. And then, you move forward with, when do you share with everybody else? I mean, there's this kind of stigma in our culture that you should wait to share your pregnancy news until you're like in a safe zone, if you will, where you're less likely to lose the pregnancy or have a miscarriage. And every woman is different, in terms of their sense of privacy and wanting to process things. I think that the culture of keeping it a secret is starting to change. And I personally think that's a great thing, because if you're a woman and you do experience a loss, miscarriage, you don't want to go through that alone. And if nobody knew you were pregnant, then you are going through it alone. And I've, being a women's healthcare provider, primarily, I've worked with a lot of women, and I have a lot of close friends and family in my life that have suffered through loss, and going through it alone is just not necessary. And I think about, in our parents' generation and grandparents' generation, it wasn't really talked about, and how many women really did have to struggle through that time alone. And so I think whenever it feels right for you to share the news is totally fine. But I think that if you want to share the news early, like, I fully support that. And if you want to wait and share the news until you're in the second trimester or halfway through pregnancy, I totally support that too. I don't think there's a right or a wrong. But once you do have that test, it can almost feel like, well, when do I? Like, who do you share with first? And sometimes family members get a little funny about it. They're like, well, how come you didn't tell me sooner? Or, like, you told so-and-so before you told me, and then there's drama. And so you have to really, like with any family thing, navigate those different personalities and different, just responses that you may or may not get. You think most of the time when you share with family or friends, it's going to be supportive, but you have to also prepare yourself that people might not have the best comments. Sometimes people don't think when they say things to a pregnant woman, they just say, like, no filter. And especially when you're pregnant, you're more sensitive too, I find. And there's this element of people being like, oh, like, are you sure? Like, like, I can't think of any examples really off the top of my head, but like, people might say things that you may expect them to just be ecstatic and over the moon for you, and they may not be. They may feel like they can tell their negativity to you. So preparing yourselves for all responses, and knowing that, this journey is unique. It's going to ebb and flow emotionally. But yeah, so that's big, sharing with family and friends. And then you move forward with, okay, like, this is really happening. I should probably think about providers. And especially if it's your first time being pregnant, this can feel overwhelming. Like, okay, how do I find a provider? What type of provider? It's, if you don't know much about the birth world, do you get an OB, or do you get a nurse midwife, or do you get a home birth midwife? Are you open to having a home birth? Do you want to have a natural birth or an unmedicated birth? Do you have any risk factors? And, all the different things that can come up where you're like, okay, because by the time you are finding out you're pregnant, you're often already chugging along through the first trimester. So you think, you have this 9 months of time, but all of a sudden you have like 6 months of time, and your busy life. And so, it can feel overwhelming, again, exciting, and overwhelming at the same time. And so knowing that there's going to be this tug of war energetically and physically, emotionally, mentally, in your heart and your mind is so important to recognize and know that you're not alone and that all women go through these things. And then preparing for birth, because, in your first trimester, birth feels really far away, but there's this feeling of like, okay, I need to prepare for this big event. And again, so exciting to think about meeting your baby and holding them in your arms. But, facing labor and delivery is overwhelming for the first time. There's a lot of unknown and uncertainty, and different people go into it with different experiences and confidence levels. But again, all of it emotionally and mentally can be draining and taxing. So it's giving yourself grace and having grit. If you're going through all these decisions with a second pregnancy and beyond, then you're also, having other little ones to take care of and meeting their needs. It's a lot harder to get through the first trimester when you're taking care of other little human beings, amongst all the other discomforts that we're going to go through physically. And again, I was just there, so I know how that goes. And let's see. So physically, I really want to go into the physical stuff now, because this is where I think a lot of the navigating needs to come into play, because how you feel physically in the first trimester can have a huge impact mentally and emotionally. And so when you think of the first trimester, the hard parts physically, often you think of morning sickness, which, as most people know, is kind of a misnomer. It's really more like all day sickness. Usually starts around 6, 7, 8 weeks and can last anywhere from a couple weeks to a couple months to 20 weeks pregnancy, or some women, a small percentage, like under 20%, it'll last all through pregnancy, and it can be extreme. But for most women, it's just this overwhelming nausea that just kind of lingers all day. It's like having, if you've ever drinking any alcohol and had like a bad hangover, it's like having, from my experience, like a hangover, like all day, every day. And you just like feel this like depletion and nausea, like you're hungry, you're so hungry, you want to eat, you want to nourish your baby, but food is so, like, you have aversions to so much food, like so much of what you should eat feels really hard to eat. And the more you let yourself be hungry, the more nauseous you are. And it's about keeping like your blood sugar balanced, getting enough protein, doing the right amount of movement, getting the right amount of rest. It's such a fine balance. And then sometimes, even if you do all the right things, it's still going to be there. And there are some tricks, and tips that people will pass along that can give some relief. Ginger truly is something that I found to be really helpful, like ginger tea. Whether cold or warm, you can do like ginger chews. You can do some essential oils can help, putting them on like your temples or behind your ears. Like peppermint is good, and really keeping up with protein is big. I found that for me, protein shakes really helped because it was a good way to get some protein. I personally am a fan of collagen protein shakes. And then you're getting glycine, which your need for glycine as a important amino acid goes up significantly in pregnancy. But if you do plant-based protein, that also will really help. And keeping up with your fluids. In that first trimester, your blood volume is increasing 50%, and you need to keep up with your fluids. So having fluid imbalance can also lead to that nausea, almost make you feel like you're walking on a boat. Like, that's another example. Like, if you've never experienced the sickness, it's like kind of like being motion sick or seasick for extended periods of time, or it comes in waves. And you just really feel pretty crummy. Some women get nauseous enough where they're vomiting on a regular basis. I personally never vomited. I just would get really, really nauseous and really sick, and would have to be snacking consistently. So trail mix was my go-to. Natural Grocers has a really great selection of trail mix, and I would just always have that in my bag, or some like protein, granola bars, things like that. And a few people had recommended to me in my first pregnancy sour candy, which I always loved sour candy as a kid. So I was like, sure, it's a little bit of extra sugar, but it helps. So you can get non-GMO organic sour candy. You can order it online, or you can get it at like Natural Grocers. And just having like little snack packs of sour candy in my purse when the nausea would hit me would really help. Green apples have a little bit of sourness to them. And talking to my acupuncturist, it makes sense why sourness helps, because she described that sour is basically like the flavor, if you will, of like the liver. And one of the reasons that you get so sick in the first trimester is that your liver is having to process intense amounts of hormones, and everybody's liver functions differently. There's some evidence that if you really work on, creating, like, optimizing your liver function preconceptively, it can help prevent some of the sickness. But I know women who've done that, and myself included, and still feel the sickness. So, I mean, it's worth a try to optimize your liver anyway. But so sour foods, there's acupressure points on your wrist here. So you can push on those. I forget what the actual name is in Chinese medicine, but you put pressure here and you can actually get, I think they're called C bands. They're little like rubber elastic, kind of look like little sweat bands that you put on your wrist, and they go right on that point, and you can wear them throughout the day, and they help keep the nausea at bay. And then again, if anybody has any other tips or tricks that have helped them with the nausea and pregnancy sickness, please put them on here. Those are the biggies that I've heard of and have helped me and other women that I take care of. But so then you have the hunger, the food aversion, so snacking throughout the day. Also, you may find, especially in the beginning, that you wake up in the middle of the night starving. Like, you go to bed after, you're not hungry when you go to bed, but you wake up at like 1, 2 a.m. and it's like you could eat a whole meal. And it's like, if you don't eat right now, like, you're going to throw up. And just that feeling of such severe starvation, hunger, like baby's hungry, needs to eat right now. It's like baby's inside of you and yelling at you to go eat. So I remember in my first pregnancy, I literally would sometimes get up and like cook food. But then I really learned it's way easier to just keep some snacks on my bedside table. So, I would keep like granola bars or an apple or like a little orange or something that would just settle my stomach, give me a little boost, and then I could go back to sleep. But yeah, having food next to your table, you can maybe get it prepared into little baggies or things that aren't too loud so you don't wake up your partner. I definitely would wake up David sometimes, like opening up a granola bar, and he was very gracious, but I definitely, could be a little bit more considerate sometimes. So yeah, those are all little tips and tricks that can help with that. And it feels like it's never going to end. I had it longer with Evely's pregnancy, my first pregnancy, from like 6, 7 weeks until about 14, 15 weeks. And first pregnancy, you don't know. Like, people would tell me like, oh yeah, I was sick my whole pregnancy. And I'm like, oh my gosh, don't tell me that. I don't think I can do this that long. Because it starts to really drain on you. Like, if you think about when you've ever been under the weather or sick, it's usually for like a couple days, maybe a week, and then you're better. But picture feeling really crummy for weeks or months on end. It really starts to drain you emotionally and mentally too. And I even remember towards the end of my first trimester with Evely that I started to feel a little bit depressed. And then I would feel guilty that I was depressed because I feel like I should be so happy. I really wanted this pregnancy. I'm so excited. But there's only so much physical discomfort you can endure over time before it does start to affect your mental and emotional health. And we'll talk about the second trimester soon, but once you're there, it truly is like a light switch goes on for most women, and you're just like, you feel like yourself again and you feel better. So there is hope, there is light, and it's so worth it all. Truly, it's like every woman who goes through this often will say, yeah, I would do it again because it's so worth it. But when you're in it, it's really hard. And then other physical stuff with the first trimester is just the exhaustion and the fatigue. So if you've ever pulled like an all-nighter, you know what it feels like to be really tired. But the exhaustion and fatigue that can hit you some days in the first trimester is like nothing I'd ever experienced before. It's like I could just close my eyes and fall asleep, or, you just could lay down and sleep all day. Like, you're so tired. And all of this makes sense too when you think about what's actually happening in the first trimester with baby. So you're growing a human inside of you, a baby from 2 cells, start to multiply and grow into an intricate, beautifully designed and created human being. And all of the baby's major organ systems are developed during this time. You have the brain, the spinal cord, and then all the organ systems after that. Everything is developing. By the end of the first trimester, all of the major systems are developed. It's like second, third trimester is just about putting weight on and growing. But the first trimester is when all of the most important organ systems are developing. And simultaneously, you're developing a new organ, the placenta. And once you're in the second trimester, the placenta sustains the baby versus you. So it makes sense physiologically when you understand what's happening with the baby and the placenta and why you're so tired. And that's another, giving yourself that grace of knowing that it makes sense that you're tired, you're healthy, everything's okay. You're doing a lot. Even when you're just sitting or sleeping, your body is doing a tremendous amount of things. And I think that's another place where you need grace and grit, because you can't necessarily, take off from work for your whole first trimester and rest and nourish yourself. I mean, some women can, and that's awesome, but I couldn't, and most women can't. And, and again, a lot of people don't know that you're pregnant yet. So you almost have to put on your best and, almost hide that you're feeling so awful. And, that's a bummer. And again, mentally and emotionally. And I think if you're feeling like, I just want to share with everybody I work with so that they know that what I'm going through and that they can support me, and, share with anybody in your inner circle that can give you that extra support, especially if you have other little ones that you're taking care of. If this isn't your first pregnancy, having help with the kids and support with, cooking meals or just getting more takeout. I mean, I remember in the first trimester, cooking most food was really hard. So on the days where David's at the office and I'm home and I cook dinner, I'm like, can you just pick up some food on the way home? Because I can't cook. I'm exhausted by dinner time and nauseous. So, and again, that does end. I'm past that now, but it's tough. And then you have other physical stuff that comes with the first trimester, is those aches and those pains of, as your, belly's not really expanding that much yet, but you're starting to shift hormonally so much, and you may notice some more aches and pains in your body. You may notice some constipation or GI distress, or some women even have some heartburn as early as the first trimester. And all of these things just start kind of coming on, and you may notice that you're breaking out, your skin's, you're getting acne, and there's all these like physical discomforts that start to show up. And a lot of it is just your body processing so many hormones, adapting to all the changes, and it will pass. All of that gets better in the second trimester for most women. So there is, again, light at the end of the tunnel. And things that you can do to help with all of that are going to be having a support team. So again, we talked about having, the people you work with or your family, friends, but also having professionals in the community. And this can be a mental health support system. If you already have a great therapist that you love, definitely continue seeing them through this journey. You can even work with somebody who specializes in taking care of moms. Seeing someone like us at Pure Light, family chiropractors who specialize in prenatal care. When you come in for your adjustments with us, it's not just about the adjustment, it's about balancing your nervous system, helping you physically, mentally, and emotionally. And we schedule our prenatal visits longer than all of our other visits, because we often need more time to talk and support, and we ask questions, and we're always here to listen and be a support system through all of the ups and downs. Having a great women's health acupuncturist, I think, is really important, and someone who can really understand your needs in that way. And then they use traditional Chinese medicine, which I found really helpful for me in the first trimester. There's certain herbal supplements that help with nausea and supporting you there. So those are really good. And then, of course, finding out who you want to have as a midwife or an OB, whether you want to have a home birth or a hospital birth, birth center birth, and finding someone who can be support through the whole journey for you, and help guide you through the ups and downs of all of it. A lot of times those provider visits aren't scheduled until the second trimester, but you can absolutely schedule sooner and start building a relationship and knowing if it's a right fit. And then doulas are great too. There's some great doulas here in our community. And doulas are basically a support system. So they can support you throughout your whole pregnancy and help you make a lot of choices and become informed on a lot of choices that are coming your way. And then they can also support you through your birth experience and even postpartum. So doulas are another great person to have on board. And, knowing that, the more prepared you can be and informed you can be on the choices that are coming your way when it comes to pregnancy and birth and testing and ultrasounds and all the things, really doing the research can take away that anxiety and that overwhelm. I'm big at understanding that being empowered and being informed is really the way to go with anything in motherhood, but especially with pregnancy and birth, because it all matters so much. There's a great website called evidencebasedbirth.com, and it's research filled, again, evidence-based on all of the choices coming your way. So the more prepared you are, the less anxiety you'll have and the more calm you will be. Okay, so finding, creating that support team and really facing that anxiety, knowing you're not alone, and knowing that before you know it, you are going to be in the second trimester. And for the majority of women, the second trimester rolls around and your energy is coming back, you're feeling motivated again, you can really start to think about tackling some of the thoughts about finding a team and provider and making appointments for yourself and self-care, and you're more open about sharing your pregnancy. You may start to have a little baby bump. Before you know it, you're going to be feeling the baby kicking around in there. And all of those things just fill you with so much excitement and joy and really can, override the challenges, or like I said, surviving feeling of the first trimester once you're there. And you can really start to be prepared and supported. And truly, when you're in the second trimester, people really will tell you that you look like you're glowing. And you'll some days feel like you're glowing. I mean, one of the perks too is your hair and your skin get more clear and lush and vibrant. And it's great. You are like a pregnant goddess now. And you can really step into that and own that. And you also start to feel more motivated about doing some exercise. I kind of breezed over exercise earlier, but exercise can help some women with the sickness in the first trimester. Some women, it makes it worse. So really listening to your body, even just going for gentle walks, doing some gentle stretching, gentle yoga can really help. But once you're in the second trimester, you can kick it up for most women a little bit more and do some cardio again. I think cycling is really good, doing some strength training, and all of that really helps too, especially because then you're going to start to put on the weight, and weight is important when you're pregnant. Of course, you're growing a baby and you're naturally going to accumulate more fat on your body to support the baby and pregnancy and prepare to nurse a baby. But there's definitely a certain amount of weight that's healthy for each unique pregnancy, and moving and exercising your body can keep your body balanced and as healthy as possible when it comes to the weight gain, and help with the mental, emotional aspects of things too. Okay, so make sure I'm honoring everybody's time here. Where are we? Okay, so I think I covered everything that I wanted to cover. If anybody has anything else that they want to add or what's helped them and supported them through their first trimester, would love to hear it. I know there's always more to learn, and every pregnancy is unique. So knowing you're not alone, we're so happy for you. Congratulations. If I didn't already say that earlier in the beginning, congratulations. And you got this, and you are glowing. You're beautiful. You're an amazing mother already. Any books? Hi. Any books I'd recommend on what to expect before and or during pregnancy? Yes. So I actually have a book right here that I love. This one's more nutrition based. It's called Real Food for Pregnancy. This is a great one in terms of how your nutrition preconceptively through your whole pregnancy can really help support you, through all of these ups and downs in pregnancy as well. She has a lot of good information in there, all evidence-based. And then there are some really great other books that I can't think of off the top of my head, but I can certainly circle back, Kiana, and respond to you with that. We have a whole lending library of books at our office, and they all have kind of different vibes. Some are very like, home birthy, some are more, traditional medical. It kind of depends on what you're looking for in terms of preparing for birth and the choices through pregnancy. But that's a great question. And there are so many books out there. One actually I can think of off the top of my head is natural, what is it? It's like Natural Mama Pregnancy. I'll find it. I'll post it in the comments or in the event. What the book is. If anybody knows what I'm talking about, it's like blue and it says like Natural Mama Pregnancy, really good information in there. But again, I'll circle back to that. All right. And then, but yeah, reading as many books as you feel called to can really help. In my first pregnancy, I read all the books, like so many books, and they can really be good. That's just how some people are. Some people are more like, I want to watch, videos or just talk to people or whatever you find makes you feel supported and having as much information as possible. But all right, you guys, I think we covered a lot tonight. And again, if there's any other questions or comments, please post them in the chat. And thank you so much for joining me. Congratulations. So happy for you and your journey into motherhood, and always here to support you. Reach out anytime. All right. Have a great night.